On this episode, I have my friend Dr. Jenny Turner, who is a clinical psychologist in the UK. She is the owner of the practice Mind, Body, Soul Psychology. And she is also a shame resilience colleague of mine. So we talk a lot in this episode about how we met through shame resilience work. And really, I wanted Jenny to talk a lot about her experience with shame resilience and how that whole experience. So, we talk about anxiety and how for a long time she labeled the feeling she was having, she just thought was anxiety, and it was, but it was related to shame. And so, then learning more about shame resilience. And towards the end, we talk a little bit about transitions in our lives. Well, we talk about that through the whole thing, but especially at the end and perimenopause, and then also aligning with our soul. And it was so helpful, and didn't want it to stop. And so I wanted Jenny to come back, and I invited Jenny to come back and talk about soul alignment. And she's really passionate about perimenopause and that transition. And so she's going to come back and talk about those on another episode. But for now, I hope you enjoy the shame, resilience, anxiety, and transitions to life talk that we had. And if you do really find it quite helpful, and if you're somebody who struggles with anxiety, I have a new course, Anxiety Recovery Course, and we're using my light method in the course. So it is a 7-week course, but it's all pre-recorded so you can join and go at your own pace. And right now is the early bird special. That's why I'm talking to you about it. It's the early bird registration. And so there's a discount, and you get 4 bonus group coaching calls with me, and also a freebie if you sign up before, I think it's February 3rd, because the course launches on February 16th. So you might want to get in on that now. And there's a whole module. So I think it's 6 is all about shame resilience. So that's why I'm bringing it up here. It's so that if you get through this episode and you think, oh, that's really interesting, and I have a lot of that, and I want some help with that, then you might want to check out that course. So I'll put that information in the show notes. And I hope you enjoy this conversation with Jenny as much as I did. Jenny, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk with you.
Hi, Kelly. Me too. So good to see you.
So good to see you. I keep up with you on social media, and it's so
Hey.
good to see that, but it's just different because we spent some time chatting quite a bit, and
We
then
did.
you became a mother and a lot of things happened, and yeah, so
I think it's been about 4 years since we
yes.
spoke. Yeah, maybe even a bit longer, actually.
Yeah, since
Yeah.
we've actually chatted. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that I'm excited to have this conversation and see where it
Me too.
goes. So, I just think about, people might want to know a little bit more about you. So, at any point, like if it feels like you want to talk a little bit more, but I just feel like we should start this conversation with how we met, which
Yeah.
is we were both interested. We were doing our own shame resilience work and then
Yeah.
incorporating it into our work. So you as a psychologist, I was doing a little bit of it in my counseling practice, but also as a professor. And shame resilience is, I think, one of the most important things that we can do, and
I
in
agree.
working on our own shame. But it's
Yeah.
been this interesting journey for me where I kind of left it. I thought, oh, I've done all that. And now
Mhm.
it's coming back. And it's almost comical how much it's coming back and how people will
Amazing.
say to me, it's so funny. People will say, oh, have you heard of Brene Brown? And I don't even know what to say other than laugh. So let's talk a little bit about your shame resilience story and see where it goes.
Sure. Yes, so I came across shame resilience through knowing about Brene Brown. I think I was meandering through a used bookshop in where I lived in the south of England in, I think it was about 2015, 2016. And I came across The Gifts of Imperfection, Brene's book. And I hadn't heard of her before then, but it intrigued me. So I grabbed it as a recovering perfectionist. I grabbed that book and it really spoke to me. And so then I did a bit of research and found her TED Talks. on YouTube, watched those, really, really grabbed me. Just there was something so visceral, I think, through my body of hearing her speak about the role of shame. And it just put a name to something that I had been struggling with my whole life and just not knowing what it was. That sense of just not enough, not good enough, not quite as good as the other person. It, not pretty enough, not intelligent enough, not educated enough. Whichever scenario I was in, I would find myself feeling not enough within that scenario.
Mhm.
And I thought it was just me, which I now know that is how shame operates through the resilience practice. But at the time, I thought it was just me. And then there was this woman, Brené Brown, saying things straight from my heart and soul, and I was just blown away by it. So it felt like my first experience of it was personally, it really touching me. And then I was working in pediatrics at the time in London. So I was supporting most often parents of children who had a life-limiting health condition. And some of that was around grief of the diagnosis and around anxiety around managing the health condition and what might happen for the family. And often a lot of it was around typical parenting challenges like sleep and feeding and behavior management, things like that. And I started to use these ideas from what I was learning from my own shame resilience practice in with my clients, which in a nutshell was normalizing that it's not just them and using a load of empathy to connect with them in that moment and say, me too, I know this feeling. Even though I wasn't a parent at the time, I think that's really important. I wasn't saying, I know what it's like for you. I was saying, I know that feeling when you're trying and trying and trying and just can't do the thing, or you feel like you're failing all the time, or you feel like someone else is doing it more perfectly than you.
Right.
Um, and that felt really powerful in the work with those parents. And so I thought there's really something to this. And then I, in a nutshell, burnt out in that job in the National Health Service, being asked to do too much with not enough resource for too many years. And also I think my shame resilience practice was key to this. I started being able to set boundaries around what was okay and what was not okay for me. And I realized this was not okay for me to keep working in this way indefinitely. I was also thinking about trying to get pregnant at the time, and a doctor had said to me, well, you need, not a lot of stress in your life. And I remember laughing and going, should I quit my job then? And he was like, maybe. So I was like, okay. So I had a big rethink, really. And I do think looking back, the shame resilience stuff was really integral to that. So I left that NHS job and set up my own private practice, but I still felt really scared to do that. Like I felt like it was such a big deal. I didn't feel I was qualified enough, didn't feel I was business minded enough, didn't feel, and here were all these shame messages coming up again. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to be really daring, and I'm going to go to the US and I'm going to train with Brené Brown's company. And then I'm going to come and bring that knowledge back. And hopefully it will help me find the courage to set up my private practice. And it absolutely did. And I could talk about this for the whole hour, but it absolutely did. And I had set up, I think I got back in April or May, and I'd set up a private practice by the July, putting all of that, that sort of, yes, I don't feel enough and I'm going to do it anyway, all of that into practice. And and then very quickly, within 6 months, I think, of setting up that private practice. And that's when you and I met, because you were my consultant
Yeah.
in terms of me getting that qualification after the training.
Yeah.
And I became pregnant in that year after that training. And then I think it's important to note I was 39 at the time I got pregnant, and I was 40 at the time I had my son.
Mhm.
And so then then the shame resilience practice really comes into its own, because I'm a mother. Well, and even before that, on the fertility journey, we didn't get pregnant straight away, and all the thoughts of not fertile enough, not young enough, all of these ways I was failing already to be a mum on that journey. And yes, and then once you're a mother, goodness, there's so much shame associated with motherhood. So
So
much.
much,
And
so
yeah, it's
much.
been an absolute lifesaver for me, this practice. Yeah.
I know it really, and you know, similarly, it just really spoke to me. I think I
Yeah.
came across somebody said, well, she was saying Brene Brown, but I didn't know what she was saying. I didn't, Brene, is she trying to say Rene?
Is
Like,
that
what
a
is
name?
happening? Yeah, then at first it's like, wait, who is this? Um, and it just, I mean, it's really, it's like she was speaking from my heart. But
Mm,
what's so amazing listening to you, and I could listen to you for hours because I
mhm.
love how you speak. But here's the thing, you are so more than qualified for so much. I mean, you're just a beautiful soul. You're an incredible
Oh,
human
Kelly.
being. You're very kind. You're very smart, but you also have tons of qualifications. Like you're a psychologist. And I think that's what
Yeah,
happens for a lot of us
yeah,
is that we feel not enough, and so we keep getting more degrees, this job, that
yeah,
title, and it never
yeah,
feels like it's enough because we're always measuring ourselves against somebody higher or what we
mhm,
perceive to be somebody who
mhm,
has more or is
mhm,
smarter or younger or prettier, all the things.
mhm.
And it blows me away because I just hope people really listening are realizing like,
Yeah.
this is like it makes no sense to the person who's listening to you to go, "You have it all. Like, what do
Mhm.
you not have?"
Yeah,
And you still
yeah,
feel not enough, and I think it's
yeah.
such an important thing for people, and I don't know about you, but I didn't know what to call that. I didn't know that was called shame
Me too.
until
Mhm,
you do, and then you're like, "Oh, that
mhm,
experience inside of me that I
mhm.
would just say it's me doing my thing where I would just get weird in social
Yep.
situations or leave,
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know, things or be upset and not talk to somebody for 6 months, but it's really from my own shame storm."
Absolutely. I think I called it anxiety for a lot
I
of my
think I
life.
did too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that I have always identified with anxiety. I've always identified with feeling nervous, often feeling like I didn't want to say anything, fear of public speaking. And by public speaking, I mean in a very small group of people, I would feel this almost terror of saying anything. Um, and I had a lot of people pleasing behavior and I had a lot of perfectionistic behavior. And yeah, I thought that was related, if anything, to anxiety.
Mhm.
And so I had this story about myself that I was just an anxious child, an anxious teen, an anxious woman.
Mm,
And yeah, when I learned about shame, it gave this whole new lens. It was like putting a whole new lens in front of my
mm.
face so that I could see so clearly. And I said this the other day, it's almost like being through the matrix and like seeing the interactions between people with this lens of shame and how that impacts on connection and disconnection and how it impacts on empathy, and when people just get empathy really wrong and people are left sort of hanging with this such vulnerability. And yeah, it's been so fascinating to have that language, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know you took a little bit of a break, but you're back in private practice, right?
I am, yeah. I only took about a 9-month break in the
Mm.
end and
Yep.
then came
Yeah.
back to private practice, but just one day a week. So I worked one day a week from when my son was 9 months old to very recently, actually. And now I'm just building up. So I've actually gone to 3 days a week at the moment, like very recently.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is,
Yeah.
yeah. And I just remember one of my favorite things about you, though, is how good you are with language. Like, you're really gifted with words and language. And I just want to point out again how funny and not funny in a ha ha way, shame can keep
Yeah.
us from something that is so, I mean, that's just a
Yeah.
gift that you have. And then for you to worry about it, not put
Oh
it
my
out
goodness.
there,
Oh my goodness.
you know,
Terror.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Thank
also,
you so much for saying that, Kelly. It's lovely. And
it's
I'm sitting
true.
here and I don't believe you.
Oh,
Here we
you
are. Like it's
I am
still,
not lying to you. I would not
I'm,
lie to you.
I mean, yeah, that's one of the things, isn't it? Like I believe you're an honest person. And yet you are saying something to me that really challenges the shame that I have going on here. And so I have to do something with that. And so I'm just like, oh no, it's just, she just doesn't know me well enough. She just, all of that, all those stories you make up to sort of make it make sense. And I mean, it's like, it's interesting you're saying this particularly about my language, because we're recording a podcast now, and this is my third ever podcast that I've recorded, and I'm very much in new shame-filled territory right now. Like I am, I was taking some deep breaths, I was like, am I really going to do this? Shall I pull out? It's like, it's very new for me. And so definitely using my shame resilience practice, it's what has me sat here talking to you, and to have the courage to do the thing that feels like I can't do, but I can.
Yes,
And
you can. Yeah,
it's just,
you're
and it's
doing it, and
I'm
I'm
doing it.
so grateful.
Exactly. And it is such a good message that you're highlighting by saying shame has absolutely nothing to do with what people see on the outside. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. It is all to do with how you feel on the inside. And those two things are often light years separate from each other, aren't they? It's
Yeah,
so powerful.
light years. And for you, so what allowed you took some deep breaths, and I do like that you connected it to anxiety, because I did the same thing. I just thought I'm an anxious, I just have an anxious disposition, but which
Yeah.
actually has ended up why I ended up in quantum health and realizing we don't have to have an anxious disposition. We can actually
Yeah.
rename ourselves and do things that we never thought we could do. And
Yeah.
I do think it's important. Like, I really distinctly remember that you were really good at language, especially with like writing and pointing that out to you. So I would never lie to you anyway, but it really is like a gift. And so I just wonder, how is it that you are sitting here? Like, you took some deep breaths.
Yeah.
What are you saying to yourself? Like, how are you getting
Oh,
through this so that you can be here? And yeah,
yeah. So lots of self-compassion. I
yeah,
would say that has been a massive takeaway from my shame resilience practice. So sort of noticing how I feel
yeah,
and really trying to be mindful around what is causing that anxiety, what is causing that fear, that vulnerability. Um, and then using really kind words with myself. And it doesn't even have, like, I think when I started with self-compassion, the sort of real self-kindness speak of like, to put your hand on your heart and say you are a brilliant person, you're a loving person, that felt too far of a stretch for me.
yes,
But
right,
where I started with it was to just say, it's okay, you're human. Humans feel this. That's okay. It's all right. It's okay, you're feeling all these things. You're human. And that for me was my sort of gateway into becoming more kind over time with myself. And so, yeah, I think I've definitely said that today. It's okay to be nervous. It's, new things are new things, and new things are hard for everyone. So that's the sort of language that I use now, instead of believing I can't do this. Everyone else knows how to podcast and I don't know how to do it. I shouldn't even try. The language has really shifted within me to, it's normal to feel anxious when you do new things. It's normal to feel nervous. It's normal to not know how it's going to go, what you're going to say. Is it going to flow? Are you going to lose your train of thought? Through it, that's okay to worry about all of that. That's normal. That means you care about it, right? That means it's important to you and you want to do well. They're good qualities to have.
right.
And yeah, and it helps that it's you, Kelly, and I know you and I know how kind you are. And and I've listened to your podcast, and it's such a lovely atmosphere you create with all your guests on your podcast. So yeah, I think that's part of it as well, isn't it? Doing a bit of research, finding out about the situation you're stepping into,
Mhm.
to sort of correct that story in your head that it's going to be terrifying and awful.
They're
Um,
scary, and yeah.
yeah, exactly.
I
And
love
also
it.
just reminding myself that everyone has to start somewhere, and also reminding myself that when I started as a clinician in my training, I spent a year just sweating. Like, worried I was getting every single clinical appointment wrong and that it wasn't good enough. And now I don't feel that. I feel really confident and calm when I'm with my clients. Of course, there are times where I get activated and dysregulated and, big feelings and all of that do throw you off as a therapist. That's part of the job. And then you know how to come back to yourself. Um, but sort of reminding myself this is a similar process. No one gets to start something new and be expert at it straight away. And at the same time, no one becomes expert without starting
Right.
and being vulnerable in the learning process. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's the sort of things I've been saying to myself.
I love it, and I love that you're reminding people, like, you don't have to say, "I'm the most amazing person on the world," like, you can start with,
No.
"It's okay, I'm okay. It's okay if I don't feel I mean, I'm human." That's, like
Yeah,
I know what Robert Hilliker used to say is, "When in doubt, be human." It's like, "Okay, I got
I
that.
love that. Yeah,
When
that
in
I can
doubt,
do.
be human." Yeah, and so
Yeah.
I love what the shame resilience work has done in my life, what's done in your life. I
Mm,
know for me, like, and I remember when you were first pregnant and we talked a lot about this whole, and you were working with parents. And really, when you
yeah.
started your private practice, it was like, I want to work with parents, but I'm just now becoming a parent, or you weren't even a parent, I think, then, and then you got pregnant.
Mm,
This whole journey for you has been so eye-opening. And I was more excited for you than I think you were even excited, because I was like, Jenny, this is going to open you up in ways, and you're going to
yeah.
experience shame in ways that you've never, but also it's going to open your heart in ways that
Yeah.
you can't imagine now.
No.
But when you got, and so I thought maybe
Yeah.
we'd talk a little bit about that, like being a mom, and
Yeah.
then now
Yeah.
perimenopause, which is like a real kicker.
Yeah.
Um,
Ooh, it's hard work.
and it was hard work. And
Yeah.
then also
Really
like
hard.
back with your clients and like just managing
Yeah.
all of it is a lot.
Mm,
It's
it's
a
a
lot.
lot.
Yeah. So, but we
It's a
could
lot.
start with becoming a mom.
Yeah. I'm remembering now you saying that to me. And yeah, you did. And you're so right. You're so right. Like you can't know how your world will open up once you understand how shame operates and how you can respond to it in such a more constructive way, how it doesn't have to keep you trapped and stuck and feeling alone. Like it is just life changing. And yeah, I felt a bit sort of teary as you said that. Like you're right, it really does. It has cracked open my heart 100%. And I'm like, it, it's interesting because one of the things I've discovered in the line of parenting is that my son is a highly sensitive individual. And that has led me to understand that I am a highly sensitive individual. And again, I'm not just an anxious person. I'm someone who, I believe has like almost like a superpower of sensitivity through my whole nervous system, which means I feel things like I feel the hot, I feel the cold, I feel energy fluctuations, I feel emotions in other people, whether they say anything or don't say anything.
Yes.
And I think that there's a process now that I'm understanding. Becoming a mother heightens your sensitivity. I do believe that shame resilience is part of that because I think with increased sensitivity comes increased vulnerability.
Mhm.
And if you can't tolerate that vulnerability, then you might shut it down. And so I think for me, I had that toolkit to not shut it down. So my sensitivity has absolutely increased. That's in terms of my sensitivity with myself. So, for example, I now can spot in my body when something is not right long before it sort of gets to the point where, okay, right, I need to see a doctor right now because I've gone too far with this and I'm in so much pain. Or, like I can really pick up those pains and aches really early. And I think that's what's happened with perimenopause, in that I am 44 now. And at 42, I was picking up on so many different things that actually even the doctors were saying, no, you're too young for perimenopause. And I was like, I really don't think I am. I really feel like there's like all of these little things I'm feeling in my body can't be totally separate things. And it certainly can't be fixed with just anti-anxiety medication, which was the only thing I was offered.
Right.
So yeah, so yeah, I I think that having that sensitivity, which has increased through motherhood,
Hmm.
has helped me to understand my body better in my perimenopause journey. And also, I've then gone on to learn that actually perimenopause itself is another initiation transition for women, just like becoming a mother, which also has within it like magic that our bodies naturally draw our attention to itself, to our bodies, and to what's going on for us, and to our psyche, and to our soul, and what is working for us and what's not, like what's out of alignment for us. Like it feels like a real sort of time in our lives where our sensitivity gets increased for ourself and our self-care, I think. And so I've had all of that going on at the same time.
I know that's
So
what's amazing to me. And I think you're absolutely right. It's just that usually people have like 10 years between, and yours just went boom, boom, boom. And I
yeah,
think it's so, I personally just think it's so beautiful how life lined itself up for you. I'm sure it didn't always feel
yeah.
that way because I know it didn't
Hasn't
feel that
felt
way.
beautiful.
It does not feel, I know. But I just like you found like just the way that you were working before, and that's a beautiful work that you did, but you knew that wouldn't be sustainable right now.
Yeah,
And so, and then to find the shame resilience work before becoming pregnant, how beautiful
yeah,
was that? And then,
yeah,
like, each little thing has been leading you to the next stage, season
yeah,
of life, but
yeah,
yet preparing you along the way, which I think is really
yeah.
really beautiful. If you can take the exhale, if you can exhale the way you just did.
Yeah.
And I can say
Yeah.
like being newly into menopause and like how long perimenopause actually lasted that I
Mm,
just
yeah.
didn't know because I don't know, nobody tells you. We're talking
Mm,
like a 10-year period of
yeah.
this
Yeah.
transition, but also like really not just important in terms of like really making us turn into our own and our own bodies. I think so that we can then be a light in a different way to the
Yes.
people around us. Like we're
Yes.
all light and we're a light all the time, but there's something
Yeah.
in this phase of
Yeah.
being able to tune in and take care of ourselves in a different way so that we can then tend to the light inside of us
Absolutely.
and shine that light for others.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. And it's
Yeah.
one of the real sort of learning points for me in this process of the shame resilience and becoming a mother and having my setting up my private practice and going through perimenopause is that the real theme has been,
Yeah.
how do I provide care for all of these people, including my son, including my clients, and at a point in my life where I have never needed more care myself. I have never needed more care myself, and I have never had more caring responsibilities either. And that has felt at times like such a tension. And if I'm honest, before I knew the word perimenopause, it was just attention. It was just almost like I kicked the can of self-care down the road because I was like, I'm just focusing on mothering and working, mothering and working. That's my season right now, mothering and working. And I kicked self-care down there. I was quite good at self-care before I became a mother. And I put it on, I did what I could, but I definitely scaled back on it.
Mhm.
It felt like just the only logical choice in terms of the demands on me at that time. And then my health just started to unravel. Like in so many different ways, my health started to unravel. But I couldn't reconcile this of like, I am like falling apart, but I'm trying to meet all these care responsibilities and I don't have time for self-care. But like it was like I just couldn't reconcile it. I couldn't make sense of it. And then I found the word perimenopause and it just gave that lens again it's like the word shame gave a lens to help me understand things. The word perimenopause gave me a lens to focus my research, focus, okay, so why is the self-care I need now different from the self-care I needed before? Oh, because my hormones are changing. So I'll focus on that. And that was really what was a massive turning point for me. I made some lifestyle changes. I started to get healthier. And then it all sort of fell into place of like, they're not in tension with each other. Self-care and care of others are actually not in tension with each other. They are cumulative. Like the more you take care of yourself, the more you can, as you say, shine a light for others, be a beacon for others, be a supporting container for others. Like you literally, such an old saying, that you cannot fill from an empty cup. You cannot do it. And I think there's so much said about motherhood and early motherhood in particular that sort of does encourage us to put looking after ourselves on hold. And I do believe that it's why one of the reasons, there's so many, but one of the reasons why so many of us slam into perimenopause and menopause with such debilitating symptoms. But I really want to change this message for women. I really want to share this message of like, if you can look after yourself, not only will you mitigate the effects of all these changes in your body, but you are absolutely doing the best care of others that you are doing.
Yeah.
Like they're not in competition with each other. It's this false, I think, sort of capitalist patriarchal idea that these things are in
Yeah, and direct
opposition, and they're
conflict.
not.
Yeah.
Exactly, they're not.
And I love that you're bringing up that it felt like this tension, like this tension that was always
Mm.
there, but like tension from where? Like from the messages we get? What in that? What attention from ourselves? But I think it's good to, I really appreciate that you're opening this up and that we're going to talk about this for people. And even if men are listening, it's like, this is what's happening with your women. So let's, and I think it's happening for them
Absolutely.
too, but we're just, that's a whole nother thing because their hormones are doing different things too. But
Absolutely.
let's talk about self-care. Like, what do we even mean? What has been the most, when you said, like, I needed more care at this point in my life than any other time in my life, like, what kind
Yeah.
of care? What does that look like for you?
Ah, so good question. I feel like as I said, I was quite good at self-care. I was quite, so in my sort of late 20s, early 30s, before that, I didn't know what self-care was. I didn't understand the concept. And then I had my own weekly psychodynamic therapy for 4 or so years, a really intense experience that really unlocked so much for me. And one of the things was, oh, I'm a grown up and I can take care of myself. And so that was really the first time that I really started thinking about it. And interestingly, actually, I've just said like becoming a mother and perimenopause helped me understand that there is no tension between self-care and looking after others. But actually, I'm now realizing I went through that when I worked in the National Health Service in the UK, and we were being asked to put our own needs aside, to work extra hours, to work overtime, to take on too much work, to do all our own admin and not have appropriate support, to, all of this burnout so that you need long-term sick leave because that's the only way to get respite in this role. And I knew then, something in my bones, I knew then this is not the way. If we are not taking care of ourselves, we cannot be taking care of the people we're serving. And that was my interesting, I'm just thinking now, like
Yeah.
that was my fight in the NHS. It really was. That was my, like, I clashed with so much management in the NHS because I kept saying, what about us? What about us? When do we get to look after ourselves? When do we get to slow down? When do we get to take a break? When do we get to have a breath? When do we get to catch up on things so that we feel competent in this role? All of these things. And when do we get to say no when our colleagues on sick leave and we're being asked to do our job and their job? When do we get to say no? And so it's interesting now that the same lessons, I think, come cycling back around for you in life, don't they? And
Yeah.
I think this was my
Amazing how
lesson.
that works. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it was because in the NHS, the way I managed that in the end was to say, this is not okay. And I left, I opted out.
Yeah.
And then I came cycling around the exact same tension, except this time I couldn't walk away and I didn't want to. It was mothering. I didn't want to walk away from my son. I love him more than anything. And I was drowning and I needed a different way. And I think that's how that tension really finally not got resolved. Goodness, I'm not there. I haven't arrived. But I'm like untangling it now on the journey of
Yeah.
really trying to integrate these things, that it is both and that we have to find ways to do both and.
Both and. A couple really important points I just want to make sure people heard there is that it's different from walking away from a job or a career or something
Yeah.
that you've done, which is hard. But when it's something like being a mother and you can't or don't want to walk away, even if it's a job you didn't want to walk away from. But
Yeah.
what I heard you say is like, when do we get to take a break? When do I get to take a breath? When do I get to say no? So when I'm asking like what does self-care look like? And I think it can look different for
Mhm.
different people. It doesn't mean necessarily a massage and a
No,
pedicure every week.
no.
It really is the ability to hold your boundaries, what's okay, what's
Yeah.
not okay, to be able to
Yeah.
say no,
Yeah.
to literally step back when you need to take a breath,
Yeah.
so, like these simple things, and I know you've been incorporating more of the quantum health, I see,
Yeah. Definitely.
you earthing and being
Yeah.
outside and getting the light. So, simple things that
Yeah.
actually help fuel us to actually recharge us, because that's the other piece
Yeah.
that I was hearing is
Yeah.
that self care is really about recharging. And
Yeah.
if we don't drain the tank, and I think sometimes in psychological terms, I do think like in trauma work, it's helpful to drain the tank of the negativity, the distress that's in there. So I don't mean it in
Hmm.
that way. I just mean like if we don't drain our bodies, if our electric bodies are charged enough, we never are completely burned out or drained, then it's easier to keep them charged.
Absolutely.
So we may not need like a month off. We just
Yeah.
need 10 minutes to go outside, get some
Yes.
light, earth, and breathe. Like
Yes.
it's
Absolutely.
not, if we
Yeah.
don't get that burned out and that drained, then the
Yeah.
self-care
Yeah.
looks different than it would,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. I
Yeah,
think that's such an important point. I'm so glad you raised it. When I talk about self-care, I am absolutely 99% of the time not talking about spas and foot massages and bubble baths, although
lovely.
sometimes
Sure.
those are nice.
Lovely. Yes.
What I'm talking about when I talk about self-care is meeting basic human needs. So I'm talking about getting enough water. So before I understood,
Hydration. Yeah.
yeah, hydration, before I understood about quantum health from learning through you, Kelly, I knew water was important and I knew sleep was important.
Mhm.
And I didn't know all the ways my sleep got disrupted by by modern day living. We could definitely talk about that. But so I always knew that like some of the basics were important, and breathing, as you say, like breathing, like so many of us breathe unconsciously to about here. Like we breathe to here, to our neck or to our upper chest. And this was me a few years ago. I learned how to breathe to my belly and how to consciously take time to do that. And that has been absolutely one of the changes that has been revolutionary for me, learning how to breathe. And for that reason, I no longer wear skinny jeans. I wear comfortable trousers and leggings and things, because anything that restricts my breathing is restricting my health and my care for myself. So I just don't do it anymore.
I
And it
love
is
that.
these are I think this is the key for busy mums, because we can't take a weekend off to go away. And actually, that doesn't solve anything. But again, I can't help. This is part of my shame resilience practice, actually, is that critical awareness, that zooming out to see what are the factors here that are making me feel as stuck and alone like this. And capitalism is one of those. It wants us to get so burnt out and drained. So we are like plugging away, working for free. If you're a carer, you're working for free, you're propping up the economy. and you're getting so burnt out that guess what? You have to go and spend thousands of pounds or dollars on something to make you feel better. So it doesn't want us, capitalism doesn't want us to just top up with very real, actionable human, getting our human needs met. You
Mhm.
know, it wants us to be stuck on this hamster wheel of like
Mhm.
running, 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 running. Oh, I need to get off the hamster wheel now and replenish, and so that I can get back on it and run, 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 run. And that is not how I think about self-care anymore. I think about self-care as like, how do I get off this hamster wheel and deconstruct it, like take it apart because this isn't, I don't want to get back on it. This is not conducive to healthy living. And it's not what I want to model for my son either. That is like a big part of this for me is like, how did I end up on this hamster wheel? Oh, because I saw it modeled that what do? We just get on the hamster wheel and we run and we don't ask for a break and we don't ever say no and we don't stop to take a breath and we don't stop and have a glass of water because we're thirsty. You know, we don't ask for that when we need it. We just keep going. We just keep going. And so I'm like, that's in one of the ways there's just no tension here between self-care and parenting because you are absolutely modeling how the next generation is going to grow up actually tending to their human needs.
Yeah.
This is win-win.
Yeah. And I love, okay, so I the image of like deconstructing the hamster wheel is so
Yeah.
fascinating to me. Like, yeah, let's just take that sucker apart.
Get it
Um,
down. We don't need it.
deconstruct it. And also, like, I just think what I'm just gonna say, since we started talking about shame, I think sometimes when people get off the hamster wheel, they then have to be with themselves, and that can be very
Yes.
uncomfortable. And that
Very.
part of getting off the hamster wheel and actually doing self-care is doing
Yes.
your own shame work, is digging into your own patterns. It's the
Yes.
messy, yucky stuff that I
Yeah.
guess you and I are maybe different because we wanted to do that. And
Yeah.
it seems like a lot of people stay on the hamster wheel, not just because it's modeled for them and because somebody capitalism and all the reasons that are absolutely there, but it's also they choose to stay even when their options to get off because then
Yeah.
it's so uncomfortable to be with yourself and all of your
Yeah.
stuff that
Yeah.
then you're like, let me
Yeah.
just get back on.
Well, I mean, I understand that now through, I totally agree with you. And I understand that now through an understanding of our nervous systems in
Right.
terms of if our nervous systems have been wired earlier in our life in a way in which we didn't have our human needs met and we weren't encouraged to have human needs like authenticity and body autonomy and you know all of these things and you know enough light and enough water and enough you know
Basics, yes.
separation basics and so when we have that experience, our nervous system gets wired in a certain way and it gets stuck in a sympathetic state. It gets stuck in fight or flight. And that's what the hamster wheel is. It's a constant flight, it's a constant busyness to keep running away from how our bodies feel or from the threat that our nervous system perceives, not because I mean, goodness, for so many people, there are real threats that they are being activated by, and for many people, there is a sense of a threat that is historic for them, but it is terrifying nonetheless when they step off the hamster wheel, when they try to sit with themselves for 5 minutes, to do meditation, to breathe, to do journaling, when they say no to something and they're left on their own for momentarily, that is incredibly activating of a nervous system fight or flight response when you haven't had that care of yourself modeled for you and provided for you throughout your life. Yeah.
100% agree with you. I'm so glad that you brought that up because that it's right. You're right. We're wired and then it's not bad. It's just different. It feels, I think I was one of those people who's like, I want freedom. And so I think most people, if you say, do you want to feel free and able to like say no and to get off the hamster wheel and all, people raise their hand and say, yes,
Yeah.
me. But then
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
do, you're like, this is very disorienting. This is
Yes.
very like, and lonely feeling at times.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be. I don't think that's the way because there are more of us that are here to be supportive with the clients
Mhm.
that you have, with the clients that I have in the courses. Like there are ways, But
Mhm.
it can be very disorienting, and I think what I
Yeah,
would wanna say, I don't know, I wanna hear what you would wanna say, is please don't give up on that, and just because
yeah,
it's uncomfortable to get off of
yeah,
the wheel, if
yeah,
that there you're not gonna feel disoriented all the time. It actually is gonna be more orienting the more that you start to nourish your nervous system and those basic human needs are getting met and literally hydration, food, like
yeah,
the very basics,
yeah,
putting your feet on the earth, all of that, you are gonna
yeah,
reconnect to that light that is you and the light that's always available to you, and you will feel better. But maybe
yeah.
not at first.
No, I totally agree. I don't think I actually would go so far as to say I'm not sure anyone should be getting off the hamster wheel and deconstructing it without a team, a community, a therapist, someone that really understands why they need to get off it and how uncomfortable that's going to feel for them when they do. Because I actually would say that's almost a universal experience.
Yeah.
Of course, I can't say that, but it just makes sense for me to say that, that
Mhm.
a little bit like me starting podcasting, it's new, it feels really uncomfortable, and I have the toolkit and the support to do it anyway, and then get past that discomfort and understand, oh, I'm doing this, it's okay. And my other choice was to stay in this fear of like, oh no, I can't. I tried it once and it was terrible and I was bright red and I stumbled over my words. And so I'm going to get, go back over here and not do it again. It's that same experience, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's so much more than that because I'm talking about one aspect of, doing a podcast. Whereas when you get off the hamster wheel and you start to deconstruct it, actually it's every aspect of your life. Suddenly you're looking at your family relationships, you're looking at your friends, you're looking at your children, you're looking at your parents, you're looking at your work, you're looking at so much, and it's all really, you're absolutely right, such a good word, disorienting. And I think you're right, there is loneliness because the vast majority of people are not yet getting off the hamster wheel. Most people are staying on, so it can feel very alienating and very lonely, and it can feel like you really question, what am I doing, why am I doing this? And you need a community that can say, well, I've got some ideas why you might want to keep getting off this thing.
Mhm.
And also I think grief can come up for a lot of people in this process.
Yeah.
And if you're not supported with that, that can be really debilitating. And if you're not like getting the support you need, you're going to end up numbing those really painful feelings, and that's what the hamster wheel is about, is numbing. You're going to want to jump right back on and just numb it, just get rid of it temporarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly where I went with what I love this conversation because I was like, well, that's when we numb. And let
Yeah.
me just tell you, as somebody who has been working with getting rid of the numbing and, just moving
Mhm.
my numbing around. So once you're off the
Yeah.
hamster wheel and things are uncomfortable, you're gonna want to drink, eat, smoke some. I mean, like
Yeah.
it's not uncommon to want to numb the intense feelings. And
Yeah.
most people think alcohol and drugs, but hey, hey, work is like the wheel itself is an addiction.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah.
are all kinds of
Yeah.
addictions and ways that we
Yeah.
try to feel better. And to be on this sober journey with
Mhm.
the uncomfortable feelings is
Mhm.
it is not
Mhm.
always pretty. I think it's worth it. I just want to put it out there
I
that
agree.
I really I can't imagine living in a different way and how living
Mhm.
on the wheel with the wine, I mean, like, it just seems like, really, that's what I was doing? And with
Yeah.
a lot of compassion, but
Yeah.
also, like, I just feel so much better now. But also,
Mm.
it is so hard to feel big things and to be sensitive and to honor that and be
Yeah.
sober and like, sober,
It's
sober.
yeah, 100%. And I am
Mhm.
more sober now in my life than I have ever been.
Same.
And
Yeah.
and I remember saying that to a therapist about a year and a half ago, just like it is just like I'm raw like all the time, like I've got nothing, like because I'm consciously dismantling all of these numbing activities. And so when I feel, whew, do I feel like I really feel. And that means I feel the good stuff and the bad stuff.
Yes.
Like that's why it's worth it, because the world opens up to you, to sort of come full circle to what you were saying. Like your heart opens up, you're, you know, so much more connection is possible, so much more courage, so much more joy, so much more compassion and fun, you know, and at the same time, so much more grief, so much more overwhelm is possible, so much more, you know, shame, so much more
Yeah.
everything.
Well, because
Yeah,
and you see it so clearly. Like, it's
yeah,
like, "Oh, this is shame," and but you can then call it what it is and go,
exactly.
"Oh, okay. I know
Yes.
like, hey,
I know
shame,
how to
welcome
go
to the
through here. Yeah,
party."
yeah,
Yeah, how to go
yeah,
through it, how to navigate it, and I don't think
yeah,
it's as it can be more intense, but it doesn't seem to last as long as when, back when I didn't have the resources or I was numbing or whatever it would just linger in. As opposed
yes,
to, like, now I can feel it, recognize it, a bit
yeah,
more
yeah,
self-care, and then it passes
absolutely.
pretty quickly.
Also just wanted to say, I totally
Yeah,
agree with you, and I wanted to say that this idea of people getting off the hamster wheel or not getting off the hamster wheel, and I sort of wanted to normalize that I didn't make some sort of high moral judgment to get off the hamster wheel. I
right, no.
didn't. I literally wanted to stay on it. Like I really did. I mean, obviously, there's parts of me that didn't,
Right,
but a big part of me did just want to be normal, do what everyone else does, just keep up with the Joneses, just keep on keeping on. And yet, my experience was that my body was screaming at me. And I think this is where the perimenopause really comes in for so many of us. So, my body, I would, you know, in my 30s, I could go out for a night out and drink and dance and have, you know, rather a lot, you know, a bottle of wine, maybe a few vodkas, and I'd wake up the next day and I'd feel all right, you know. And then something changed as I got older, and I would have one glass of wine at about 8 p.m. and I would sleep terribly and
mm,
I would wake up feeling terrible for 24 hours. And I was just sort of doing that maths and being like, I can't afford to feel this terrible. So I cut out alcohol. Like it wasn't like a grand moral decision of I'm going to be a bigger person now. It was, I felt like I was just trying to survive as a young, not young, an older mum with a young son.
yeah,
I was just trying to make it through the days and the weekends and the weekdays, you know. And so I started to pay attention to what was going on in my body and being like, okay, so well, that feels terrible. So I'm going to stop doing that. So the thing that numbed the feelings actually started to create havoc in my body. And so I had to stop that thing. And then, yes, the big feelings came up, but I knew that that was part of the process. And I knew I could get support with that through more therapy. And I could get support with that through communities who understood about numbing and shame resilience and things like that. So, yeah, I just sort of want to like, you said it yourself, like compassion for people who find themselves on the hamster wheel or find themselves getting off and then getting right back on. Like,
yeah.
tell you what, if this body cooperated with what my brain wanted to do, I'd still be on it, because it just honestly felt like I was backed into a corner of like, you need another way. And so that's how I got off it. But it wasn't a sort of choice almost. It was just,
Right. Such a good point, and I really appreciate you pointing that out because here's the thing, like, unless like, we're kicked off the hamster wheel or your
yeah,
body literally says but our bodies won't lie to us. And I
no,
found that our
exactly.
mind is this beautiful thing that we have that can be powerful, but its job is to make up stories, and it will do
Yes,
that. And we can
yes.
keep doing things that are destructive, but the body doesn't lie. It
Doesn't,
just
no, it doesn't
can't.
make up anything. Yeah,
Yeah. So, yeah,
yeah,
sometimes there's no choice but to get off the hamster wheel. So I appreciate you
yeah.
saying that, like some people may make the choice, but it wasn't like this. Yeah.
No,
Like, high horse I know, like, nope, that's not how it went down. But
no,
I'm
I
so
was kicked off
grateful
it.
for the body, for being so
Yes,
honest and giving
yes,
us these messages, and for you
yeah,
and I who have experienced years and years and years, like a lifetime of being anxious and just thinking
yeah,
that was normal
Yeah.
because that's just how we were. Like, oh, I'm just
Yeah.
wired that way.
Yeah.
No, like your
No.
body's been trying to talk to you this whole time, and
Yeah.
it's so beautiful and perfect. The last little thing, since I have you, I'm like, I want to talk about alignment with your soul and how that's,
Oh, yeah.
all of what we've been talking about is really, in
Yeah.
my mind, kind of just a realigning or an aligning with your soul. And when you are
Yeah.
caring for yourself on a deep level, even on a cellular
Yeah.
level, what
Yeah.
that does to help you align with your soul. So even when it's, a yucky day or, you're
Yeah.
not feeling it, why
Yeah.
is it worth it in terms of soul?
I love this question. And again, it's a big one.
It is,
Where to start? So I think what the first thing that came to my mind is that you cannot get to your soul through your mind. That's not my experience. You can only get to your soul through your body. That is your way in. Well, maybe people can have connections with their soul directly. That's not been my experience. My experience is my body talked to me, and it's let me know what it needs, and it does need things that humans need. And I think that's where the quantum health stuff
Mhm,
is so helpful, because it really just breaks down what is a human being and what makes it function and what makes it function less well, and let's do more of what makes it function. And so yeah, my body was screaming at me, and the things that I realized it needed less of were toxins, environmental toxins, things like that. And what it needed more of was light,
mhm,
grounding. Nature has been a massive part, like spending time in nature. And it's the grounding, particularly, Kelly. Like, I've started barefoot walking in the woods. People are like looking at me like I'm crazy. I'm carrying my shoes in November, it's freezing. And I'm like, no, I'm all good. This is exactly what I need. It's exactly what my body needs. And it is exactly what my soul needs, to come back to the question. Like, our soul needs,
mhm,
I think of like the soul as like the deepest part of ourselves that cannot be touched by all the environmental crap
mhm,
that the world throws at us. It is like our mind can absolutely be polluted by that, and our body can become polluted by that, but our body speaks back to that. But our soul is just like, you never had me. Like, this is the untouched bit of us. I sort of think of it in so many different ways. I think of it as like our inner child before we got all cynical and corrupted by the world. I think of it as like our spirituality that knows that we are light, that we are stardust, that we are connected to absolutely every living thing in this world, and each other and nature and all of that. Like, our soul just knows that. And you can also think of it in really cognitive terms. I think of it in terms of values. Like, what is really important to me
mhm,
is that doesn't come from my mind in terms of like weighing pros and cons of like logical decision making. It comes from this gut feeling. And I keep doing this because it's so visceral, isn't it? It's something like so visceral, so deep in your body, that just lets you know that. And it does sort of just speak in terms of alignment, doesn't it? It can't, for me, it can't give me like, so do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. Like, it doesn't give you like a list of what's next, but it just sort of, you're doing something, and then I just get this feeling of like alignment,
mhm.
attunement, or no, this isn't right.
Yep.
This is not right. And
Mhm.
it can be thought about in terms of all of those different things, like inner child, in terms of values,
Intuition, values, like a lot of things.
intuition,
Yeah.
absolutely. That sort of spirituality. Yeah, there's like the universe speaking to me through myself, or all of that. It doesn't sort of find your own language with it. I think that's what's important. But that's sort of what
Yeah.
came to mind when you asked the question. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love that. And that you're right. It's this deep feeling of either alignment or out. Like you're either, and it's this
Yeah.
constant, it's like our nervous system that's moving
Yeah.
in and out of like just giving us signals all the time that's supposed to go from
Yeah.
sympathetic to parasympathetic. And it's and not get stuck anywhere. And so
Yes,
you can feel
exactly.
that. And I think the more we're taking good care of ourselves in terms of our body, the
Yeah,
more alignment I've experienced. And it's funny
yeah,
because I was so like not a behaviorist. I'm not like, I don't care about Skinner and I don't care, all that. And now I'm like really telling people behaviorally, walk outside and get in the
yeah,
woods and touch a tree, very behavior kinds of stuff. I
yeah,
don't think about it in terms of that, but to me, it's the way to the soul. It's the way that we nourish the nervous system and that which is untouchable inside of us or outside,
yes,
wherever it is. Who knows where the soul is? But yes,
exactly.
is untouched by all of the
Yeah,
other stuff. So that's a
yeah,
beautiful way to talk about it. Well, I
yeah.
have loved every second of talking to you, Jenny.
Me too.
Is
So
there,
much.
I mean, like,
Can we keep going?
way to go. Like, I will you can come on anytime you want. You appear to be a pro at this podcasting thing. So
Thank
congratulations
you.
on like getting through that because you did. This has
Thank
been
you.
really beautiful. And I'm so glad that you didn't say, nope, shut it down, can't do it.
Me
Yeah, you
too.
can come back anytime. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you were just like, oh, I really wanted to share this? Did we cover it all?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think, I mean, just on the journey for me, I wish I had known that perimenopause can start at around 35.
Oh,
Um, yeah, I didn't know that. So I just want as many people to know that as possible. Um, and I didn't know that that time of early motherhood matrescence, where you're going through such an identity shift and such hormonal shifts, can overlap with perimenopause, and you can have all of that going on at once. I didn't know that. So many more women these days are having babies later in life,
mhm.
and no one is talking about this overlap that will inevitably occur for so
Right.
many women. And so I feel really passionate about just highlighting that.
Mhm.
um, Maybe that's a topic for another time.
I think
Yeah, I'd love to come back.
absolutely. So much is coming to light for me, like just the whole journey of it all. So I think it's
Yeah,
really important to be talking about it. Yeah, because it's definitely a shift
yeah,
each season of it. So
yeah.
yeah, we'll save
And
that. We'll
also,
save more for that one.
yeah,
For the
yeah. I
next.
just, as you were talking there about the shift, it reminded me of a lot of things that I'm learning about perimenopause
Yeah.
are about this shift being a natural shift for us as women, and about how it is coming into greater light shining, as you say,
Mhm.
for the whole of the world.
Right.
And how, yeah, it's something about this natural progression. And I, interestingly, now have brain fog. I don't
No,
know
but
what I
I
was
just
going
want
to
to
say.
I want to
But
add that menopause, having just passed, I mean, I've just
yeah,
entered menopause. I gotta tell you, I thought it was very arbitrary. I was like, what's this whole 1 year and a day after in
yeah,
with no period? Like,
you've
what
reminded me. Yeah,
man made that up? Is what I thought, honestly.
yeah,
But I gotta
yeah.
tell you, it really felt like
Something
walking
has
through a
shifted.
door of
Yeah,
like new possibilities and like
yeah,
a new responsibilities
yeah,
of the kind
yeah,
of tending to the way that we can tend to our light in this new way,
yeah,
how the light is changing and shifting so that you can then give in just bigger ways. Like it really
yeah.
is. But I also really do love, in case this is helpful to anybody in perimenopause, I really think that my give a crap level is going
Mm-hmm.
way down. Like it went down
Mm-hmm.
before, it's going down even more.
Mm-hmm.
Like in terms
Mm-hmm.
of
Yes.
authenticity and being yourself,
Yeah.
it's like,
Yeah.
well, might as well.
Yeah. You have totally reminded me of what my brain fog was trying to drive me
Okay,
away from.
good. There
That
we go.
what this process is of perimenopause and menopause is to bring us, shed the stuff that
Mhm.
is not us, and to bring us closer in contact with our soul.
There we go.
100%. Like
I
that was what I wanted to say.
yeah.
It is a natural process by which our, like, evolutionary wisdom knows that we need to come back to our soul, and that is because it serves humanity. For the more people that come back to their soul, the greater humanity can achieve. And yeah, I'm really loving that message. I'm learning that through an organization called Red School in the UK, which talk a lot about the psycho-spiritual journey of
Okay,
perimenopause and
well, now
menopause.
we have to do another episode.
Another one.
And we have to start right there of like the more people can come back to their soul, how much
Yeah,
better is that for humanity? So
yeah,
if you feel like you've walked away from your soul or you've been doing or you're on the wheel or whatever's happening to come back
yeah.
to your soul. I think that I mean that's probably the title of that second one,
The
coming
next
back to
one,
your
yeah. And
soul.
there's this inbuilt process for women that it
Right.
naturally
Naturally.
does that for us. Yeah, brings us
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, that there's a
Yeah.
timing all set up for that. Nice.
Woo.
I
Yep.
know. Thank you, Jenny. This has been so,
Thank you.
so great. And I'll make sure that we link people so people know how to get in touch with you or they can follow you on Instagram, all the things. Yeah,
Okay.
super.
Yeah.
And
Thank you
we'll
so
do this
much, Kelly.
again.
It's been I can't wait already. It's been such a pleasure. So lovely to see you again.
Yes, you as well.